Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, welcome to our show. We have gathered together from the cosmic reaches of the multiverse, two of the nerdiest geeks to be found. We proudly present the professor and her geeky girlness herself, Ace. And now it's time. GeekyKOOL presents Professor and Ace.
Everybody, welcome to GeekyKOOL. Welcome to GeekyKOOL presents Professor and Ace, episode 14 of season 2. So we're on a special Saturday night edition of this. Normally we do this on Tuesdays and maybe occasionally Thursdays, but tonight we're on Saturday just because,
You know, life gets away from you, and you just have to readjust the schedule.
That's exactly right. So it'll just mean we get more Saturday night fun that way. So,
right. Plus, we're going to be discussing our favorite.
We definitely are. We're going to talk a little Spider-Man, which is both of our favorite heroes. So, yeah, we have a love for Spidey.
I love so many things about Spider-Man, the comics, the cartoons, the movies. Like, there's just, my husband has to fight room in my heart.
Understand.
Spidey takes up a lot of room. It's fine. All of them.
And in his heart, you have horror movies that you have to make room for AJ.
Horror movies and the Riddler. So
this is true.
Like, you can see behind me horror movies, and you can see a couple Riddlers throughout. It's a thing.
It is a thing. But we're going to talk about ours. We're not going to talk about theirs. I'm sure we're going to talk horror movies probably another month or so. We'll start talking about stuff like that for Halloween coming up. But we're not there yet. So let's talk a little bit of Spider-Man. So we decided we wanted to talk through the different iterations of Spider-Man in media that's out there. Not so much the comic books, but talk about the cartoons and the live action movies and a live action TV series too, and kind of talk about.
A lot of people forget about.
Which a lot of people do, which may be forgettable for a reason.
I like some bad TV sometimes. So
sure. Right. No, I'm with you. I'm with you completely. So let's and actually did not include one iteration on here. We'll talk about it. But I just remembered that I missed an iteration of it. So let's start off with back Spider-Man. I believe it stands in 1962. If I'm remembering when it was exactly, I know it's early 60s. I believe it was 62 that Amazing Fantasy came out, and then shortly thereafter, Amazing Spider-Man 1 came out after the popularity of Amazing Fantasy 15, which
saved Marvel completely.
It did.
They were going out of business, and then Spider-Man, they were like, let's throw this crazy idea out there, and this is our last issue, so whatever, we can do that. And then boom, it completely turned it around. So
it did, and it made it such a huge thing, so much so that only 5 years later we get an animated series on television, which I don't know if you remember, but I remember they would show reruns every so often of this series. So for those that are young that are watching, reruns are when TV would show episodes they'd showed prior for something else.
We have to say this. So before streaming sites, you would have to set in front of the television to watch an episode that you wanted to watch. You would go to the bathroom during commercial breaks. You would rush back in there and sit down, because if you missed it, you wouldn't see it again. The seasons usually lasted, the fall and sometimes winter, and then you wouldn't see it again until it was in reruns, which is just replay of that in the summertime, or if it went syndicated and you could find it on some Saturday night, TV show that replayed it. So.
Right. Or, for kids programming, which this animated series was considered, sometimes they would be like, oh, well, we can do this for cheap by replaying these on after school time. So that can take up a block of time where kids are home from school, because kids used to come home from school by themselves and sit in front of the TV. So
or Saturday mornings.
Yeah. So
like before, in the early 80s, they would throw in like the Flintstones and the Jetsons and that sort of thing before the big toy TV show thing happened, where every toy had its own TV show, because that's how you sold the toys.
That's exactly right. Your cartoons were based off of toys and cereal. Those were really the things. So let's throw this up here for people to see. This is Spider-Man, the animated series from 1967. And you know what? I really like this. It's go ahead.
No, go.
I was gonna say it hits a lot of the things that Spider-Man was doing very early on. The first 20 issues of Spider-Man, it doesn't necessarily make it dumber, but it takes it from a comic book into a program for a kid that's 18 minutes or whatever long, and makes it a little less violent. But I always thought it was pretty cool because it actually had some pretty cool storylines to it, introduced the characters well. You had a good feel for who Peter Parker was from watching the cartoons. Thought for a cartoon from the 60s, which aren't known for having cartoons that translated a lot of things well, it did a really good job of translating what the comic books had into a kids level cartoon.
Right. The animation, like a lot of people, if you go back and watch this now, and you haven't watched 60s, 50s and 60s cartoons, which I love 50s and 60s cartoons.
Me too.
The animation is very primitive. I don't know how else to say it, compared to what it is now. They didn't have computer generated animation.
Right.
These are hand drawn stills that are literally moved. And so when you're watching it, it's a 2D. It's flat. It is a flat artwork, and you can tell that it's flat. Whereas now, they have so much computer generated stuff. But what I appreciate about it is the art style, because it was hand done, does have remnants of the comic book without being exactly like the comic book. It's a different artist's take on it, but it's really cool. I love watching old cartoons because of this, because the time it took to make a cartoon back in the day was extraordinarily long. Each one of these is a comic book, basically, panel that they did on top of it to get them to move. And I think it was so cool. I do agree that it did pander down to its audience a little bit, but you got to think, in the 60s, comics were, this is literally 5 years after, and Spider-Man, by the way, came out August of 62.
See, there we go.
We're talking in August too. This is perfect. But it was a great way to bridge that gap between comics, which were getting a big push, especially Marvel, because Spider-Man saved them, and bringing it into kid entertainment, which is still at its infancy at this point, television-wise. Yes, they had certain shows that, you had your Looney Tunes, you had your Captain Kangaroo and Howdy Doody and those kind of live action puppeteered kind of shows, but these are your ancestors to your superhero comic book themed cartoons now. And it's really cool. I like it.
Yeah. DC had a few cartoons on about the same time, but I don't think they were ever as big of a hit as this was. this really kind of captured the characters a lot differently. And even though it did kind of play down to this is meant for kids, because cartoons at that point really were meant for kids.
For kids.
But it really hit home with, I mean, you've got Peter Parker, who's a very fallible character, and you see that in this cartoon, which is very unusual because your heroes usually weren't fallible even in cartoons at that point. So.
Well, and that's our, both of us, that's one of our favorite parts about Peter Parker is he is fallible. And he was the first superhero to be shown completely fallible and not fallible, but devastatingly, like, I can't save everyone. Like, he was one of the, like, kind of showed that superheroes aren't always super and they can't always be saving everyone. Somebody has to pass. Which was
and shows you, throughout the whole time of Spider-Man, he struggles with the feeling that he needs to do this.
Right.
This is living up to Uncle Ben's expectation versus how much this is disrupting my life and how much I'm having to sacrifice. Where you don't see what the sacrifice is for Clark Kent or for Bruce Wayne or for, even Iron Man or Captain America. You don't see that. But with Spider-Man, for him to stop in the middle of what he's doing meant he was not going to be showing up someplace on time. He was going to disappoint somebody. He wouldn't get paid for a day's work. I mean, there's all sorts of things that were going on.
The big difference is Spider-Man, when he first came out, he was a kid.
Right.
So it's school, and it's like having your teenage dorkiness, because we're all little nerdy, geeky kids when we're teenagers. Even the cool kids had their thing, and it was showcasing that and how you wrap your head around, like, I'm growing up and learning who I am, but at the same time I have to save the world. And the cartoon did pander down, but it had to, because that's why it was made. It was made to get younger kids into reading comics.
Right.
And as for DC, the cartoons around that time with DC, it's really hard. DC being Batman, usually, Batman and Superman. Now, Superman's a little bit more cheerful for kids, but Batman is really hard because it deals with a lot of darkness, and not in the comics alone, but the character of Batman deals with his own demons and darkness. That's hard to translate into a fun kids cartoon that can be pandered down to, like, get 4 or 5 year olds. Like, especially back then, they didn't there was too many rules to put on kids television, first of all. Like, now there's not as many rules, but it was a thing. And this, I think, did a really great job of showcasing Spider-Man to the young generation that grew to be, it's a few years before me, but it's not that far before me. But, that grew to be like those diehard Spider-Man fans. And that just pushed it. Because once you fall in love with a character when you're a kid, it's kind of a thing. It sticks. I've always heard
I agree with that. Yeah.
Like, even if it's the craziest character and you're like, this is the silliest thing ever, the things that we get nostalgic about are the things that we loved as kids. And I love this one.
Me too. This one it is really kind of like, let's start with that animated series. And again, you watch it and some of it's like, okay, it's kind of basic, everything else, but so were some of the comics, but it gave you a great feel. So I want to go to the next cartoon, and we'll come back and do some of the live action stuff. Let's stick with the animated ones for now. So the next one, we skip from the 60s to the 80s and and I love this, but this doesn't hold up nearly as well in my opinion. Spider-Man and his amazing friends.
Okay, so this is me growing up. Like, this was my Spider-Man.
Oh, yeah.
nostalgic for it, but yeah, I agree. The artwork got a little bit, and you know, I'm all about the artwork. The artwork got a little bit more. They were trying to bring it into something that it shouldn't have been brought into, you know, like in the style wise, like it kind of goes away from that Spider-Man comic book style into a very 80s cartoon style, which
it did.
It has its own style. 80s cartoons had their own style 100%.
And some of them were awesome, but
some of them were awesome because some of the stories like really were brought to life with that art style. Spider-Man already had his own art style, so
he did.
Of that like, that's not how I would have drawn it. But
and of course, again, you're doing the hand-drawn pages to be able to flip, to be able to make the motion. So they may be trying to cut costs at this point, trying to do some things, and there's a certain style that you expect with 80s cartoons. So I get that. Now, I always found it was interesting because Iceman is an X-Men character, and you bring him in, and he has no real connection with Spider-Man other than we're throwing him in this cartoon. And then Firestar is a mutant, but she's not an X-Men or anybody we know. It's a brand new character for the show. And some of us fell in love with this character. Now, maybe it's because she's a redhead. I don't know.
I'm shocked that Peter Parker really didn't, you know. But anyway, because you guys all at that age, this is why men your age love redheads. It's a thing. It's a thing.
I'm telling you, right? Mary Jane, Jean Grey, Firestar. We're in.
I think the thing that disappoints me the most about this one is the line work. On the art. And you know, the stories were okay, but I felt like I wanted more Spider-Man a lot of the times. Like I wanted to focus on Spider-Man. And I understand they wanted to bring in these other characters, which both those characters are amazing characters. Like who they are amazing characters. But when it comes to the show, when I was watching the show, I'd already fell in love with comic books, and I had already fallen in love with Spider-Man comic books. So it was not. It did not meet my expectations, even as a kid. But I still enjoyed it enough that I watched it like all the time.
I did too. I watched it, and I really became very fond of Iceman because of it. And of course, that's
why I love Iceman.
Yeah, me too. That's exactly why I love Iceman. Bobby Drake is awesome because of the show.
He's
and then
portrayed in a movie, a live action movie, in a way that I think brings him to life, like this cartoon did. And I'm always disappointed in when they portray him because he's an amazing character, and he's always a side character, or you don't really see him, or it's like, you know, he's not quite himself. Even from the comic books, like they always mesh him down to something else, and you know, that's the problem with some live action. They kind of like want to meld two characters together a lot, or they change their personality a little bit to make the stars shine brighter. So, but his character is really fun in this.
It is. You know, you talked about the art, the problems with the art, and I agree full-heartedly. I think the stories here, they do talk down to you, and I don't think they're as solid. They're not really where the original series really was kind of based on a lot of the comic books, and they did have some original stories, but it all kind of flowed in. This, I'm like, okay, so, you know, their Green Goblin take, I didn't really like that much. Kraven the Hunter episode, I'm like, what in the world are they doing? And I've gone back and rewatched some of these just because they've been on some streaming services. I'm like, I've got to watch this because I love this as a kid. I'm like, okay. I can see why I liked it, but yeah, to me, it just doesn't hold up story-wise or art-wise like the original one did.
Right. And it's weird to me because the original was, you know, almost 20 years earlier.
Right, it was.
15 to 20 years earlier. And I feel like the artwork, and it might just be because I am a huge fan of the comics, that the artwork hit that right point for me.
It did. Yeah.
And Spidey and his amazing friends didn't quite get there. Like, the Spider-Man himself was shaped a little weird. Like, he was, you know what I mean? He's supposed to be this nerdy kid, and they had him like all muscular. And I get that, because at the time they're competing against, you know, He-Man kind of characters.
Right.
You want that big, bulky, that was the thing.
Everybody wants to look like Arnold.
Yes. Conan the Barbarian kind of thing. But it's Spider-Man. He's not supposed to. And so
I do want to say that, so this is an interesting point, because at the same time period, we have an Incredible Hulk cartoon.
Yes.
Which is absolutely amazing, or I should say incredible. Its storylines are great. I mean, it is well done for that same time period. So it's just sad that you've got one which isn't, and even though I love Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends more than I love the Incredible Hulk cartoon, the Incredible Hulk cartoon holds up better.
I actually like the Incredible Hulk cartoon better than the Amazing Spider-Man.
I can totally understand that.
That's a huge thing for me to say. I mean, I love Hulk too. Don't get me wrong. He's one of my favorites too. It's fine. Professor Hulk, I'm like, yes, please.
Which we've not seen a really good iteration of Professor Hulk. So even though, well, sort of
super cute as the Hulk. I'm just gonna say that.
Yeah.
But I think that the Hulk's body size and how he's drawn in the comics, being, you know, a massive muscular thing, lent itself to the 80s cartoons a lot more for art style.
I agree with that. I do.
But
it's just an interesting thing, because both for Marvel, both Saturday morning cartoons going at the same time, I think back to back, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I used to watch them. There might have been something in between, but I don't think so. I think it was always Spider-Man and then Hulk. Spider-Man and then Hulk.
Right. And they kind of led into each other, right. Yeah. So, all right. So let's go on. So then we go to the next decade. We go into, we're leaving my favorite decade and going into the decade of darkness. But not cartoon-wise. I will tell you that the 90s were amazing cartoon-wise. The Spider-Man animated series, Spider-Man the animated series, as it became known after Batman the animated series became a thing. Spider-Man the animated series, this was good.
Oh, I liked it a lot.
This was really good. The art is good in this. And it's very much a college-age Peter Parker, unlike the original Spider-Man, which was still his teenage Peter Parker. College-age Peter Parker, but man, do they play him really interesting. They bring in really cool villains, and the stories just continue to build. The showing his battles with Kingpin and all of that. There were some misses out there, but overall, even explaining how Venom came, even though I'm like, well, that's not how it happened in the comics.
Right.
It still was a good explanation on this suit that people struggle with figuring out how to bring in. So yeah. I
agree. In 1994, that's when my son was born. So I was like, baby, here's Spider-Man. And it continued, like that was our thing. Even when he was a little older, like going up to like 4 or 5, it was Spider-Man and Power Rangers. Like we watched those every day. I liked the animation better. Yeah. And this is when we're starting to get into, it's still hand drawn, I'm pretty sure.
Yes,
but they have computers to help. Like, you know what I mean? To help. So you have that going for you. But the drawings are better. The line work is incredible compared to a decade earlier. Like 10 years made a huge difference in the line work of this. And I loved that they brought in all of these villains, because I love the Spider-Man villains, and a lot of people don't realize that DC has the Batman Rogue Gallery. Marvel has the Spider-Man Rogue Gallery. And a lot of your villains that you think are against, like Kingpin and Daredevil, okay, Kingpin is a Spider-Man villain to begin with. So a lot of the villains that have stretched out across to different, superheroes in Marvel started as Spider-Man villains.
They sure did.
This show portrayed a lot of them in a really cool way. The artwork for them, I really appreciated because most of them are very similar to the way the comics draw them. They, artists take our own little style and we add it to it. But for the most part, I could see a picture of somebody, and I would know who it was, running to the bathroom and coming back and being like, or I'd hear a voice and I would know who it was because they did a really good job with the voice actors in this one.
They did.
In the 80s, the voice actors, I'm not saying anything bad about them. I just think that the voices weren't what I pictured in my head.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, that's not how this person should sound. That's not how this person should sound. This one did a pretty good job with that. And
I honestly think the Batman the Animated Series coming out and being as popular as it was made Marvel go, what if we don't make one that's really talking down to kids? What if we make one that adults can like too? That will have a really good story like Batman the Animated Series did. And it hit hard and it was great. So
I attribute a lot of the 90s success for comic media to Batman, Tim Burton's Batman, because I think that it was, we before this in TV and movies, we didn't show the dark side of comic book characters, like hardly ever. And then that one did. That one showed it's Batman, so it's really hard to not go into some dark aspects. But kids still loved it, and I think that's when people in power were like, okay, we don't have to dumb this down for kids because grown-ups are going to go to it too. You're going to take your kids to it. We don't need it to be so pandering that the parents are like, I don't really care to watch that, because I watched Spider-Man in the 90s with my kid.
Yep.
I don't remember my mom or dad watching Spider-Man and the Amazing Friends or any cartoons really in the 80s with me, because they did pander down to their audience, but
and there was an expectation that adults didn't do that, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, so you had that mentality and so those of us that are Gen Xers, where we came home from school by ourselves and sit there and watch cartoons, that's just a part of life. So we had our 20s or whatever, and we're like,
and we're still
this is on. I'm going to watch this. This is cool. So we were that generation to where we accepted that a lot more. I think it was just a generational change, but also then it was a lot better. That was the other thing. As you were saying, it was so much better.
They realized with Batman, with Tim Burton's Batman, they realized that they were targeting the wrong audience completely with these things. You had to target both adults and kids. And that's what they did. And Superman did it a little bit. Christopher Reeve's Superman did it a little bit.
Right.
However, it was still very much like you could take your kid to it, and your kid's not going to get really scared that much. None of those things. It wasn't until the Batman came out that kids got a little scared with that movie. Like, there are some scarier type points with that movie. However, they still loved it, and the parents loved it. And I think that shift helped the Spider-Man of the 1994 cartoon, because I think that they realized you don't have to talk down to kids, and if you can get grown-ups, parents, and their kids to watch it, you're going to have a bigger audience, which means parents are going to, because let's face it, all of this stuff is about money, but parents are more likely to buy a toy from a cartoon that they enjoy as well.
Right. That's true.
So it was very smart for them, but I do think if you look back into the history of superhero cartoons, that was the shift in my mind. Like before that, they were like pandering, and now that happened, and they're like, oh, we don't have to do that. We don't have to, which thank God, because
right. No, I agree 100%. Yeah.
So
So the 90s, we agree, is amazing. That was just a great series. Had a great time with it. I was upset when the final episode aired, I remember, because I was like, oh, this has just been so good. I hate to see this go.
Right.
But yeah, it was good. So let's go to the next decade then. So we're seeing this decade thing here going on.
It just happens. It happens.
It does. Let's talk about the Spectacular Spider-Man. And the sad thing here was this series ended prematurely.
Right. So I wasn't a huge fan of the art style of this one.
Right. It's very much almost an anime light style to it.
Right, and I love anime. I don't want my Spider-Man to be anime though.
Right.
I mean, I'm just saying. It's also, I didn't necessarily like the portrayal of Peter Parker in this as much. Like I felt like his personality wasn't quite right, and it might also be the look of him. Like, you know what I mean? It might be the look of him that threw me off. But yeah, I mean, I didn't watch. I watched it, but it wasn't like I had to watch it kind of thing. It wasn't one of those moments where I'm like, no, I must watch this. Where like the 94 version, I watched it every day that it was on. You know, every time it was on.
To it, right?
Yeah,
I get that. So the interesting thing here was I didn't start watching this when it first came on. I was like, okay, it doesn't. You know, I saw the visualization of it, and I went, okay, I'm not thrilled by that. And so then I started and went back, and what I found was the storylines were actually really good in it. Now, you're right. The look and the feel of Peter's a little off.
It's off, right?
But the storytelling and the writing for it, though, were superb.
Well, I might need to go back and watch it then, because...
So, yeah. So it was one of those things where I bought into it because I liked the way they were telling the story enough that I went, okay, I can deal with this art style. I can get past it. It's not how I would draw Peter or Spider-Man or this whole world, but it's an interesting take, and the storytelling was really good. So a lot of people were very upset because it was actually doing very well in the ratings, and then was canceled by Fox because, well, that's what happens with Fox.
It happened a lot with
the Fox curse, especially in the 90s and the early 2000s. Anything really cool on Fox meant it was going to get canceled.
And, you know, Fox, a lot of people now just think of Fox as being like always there, but it wasn't. It was a new network fighting against very prominent networks at the time, all the way, like from Married with Children, which was their pretty much flagship show, all the way up. It was always struggling, and so a lot of shows got canceled. I'm not sure why. Like I never understand the decision making in this. If it's doing well and you have the potential to market it and to merchandise it and all of that, why cancel it? But it happens all the time. It still happens. Netflix
does.
A lot of their shows, three seasons and you're done.
Well, and that's because now there's that rule on streaming, because you have to pay your actors better once they've been there for 3 years. Then you got to start paying them more money. And so now some cheap series you're throwing on there that's this mega hit for you, is doing better than what they expected, and they don't want to pay people, which is the saddest reason in the world to cancel a series.
Always. It's always about the bottom line. And I'm sure there was some bottom line issues with this. There's always bottom line issues. Maybe they couldn't get enough, maybe they couldn't get enough advertisers for it at the time that they were putting it on. All of those aspects are things that are behind the scenes that people don't realize. I will go back. I will find it and go back and watch it because you told me the storylines are good. I just couldn't get, and I never watched it consistently. So I never got that consistent storyline. So that might be also a reason I didn't like it as much.
Give it a shot, see what you think, and let me know, because, and again, it's been a while since I've seen it, but I remember when it had going, that was really good. Yes, I didn't like the art style, and I wasn't into it at the beginning because of that, but man, I missed it once it was gone. Yeah, once I was hooked, and then they canceled it. You're like, of course. Are you kidding me? Oh, it's Fox. Okay, all right. Dang it. Let's kill Firefly, Space Above and Beyond, Dark Angel, Briscoe Kennedy Jr., now you kill Spectacular Spider-Man.
Oh, do you have a little bit of an issue with Fox?
I do have an issue with Fox when it comes, especially at that time period. Because like everything I thought, like, this is amazing. Oh crap, it's on Fox.
It's on Fox. How many shows did it take you to get to that point where you're like, oh, it's on Fox?
It took a few. It took a few to where you're like, well, that's strange. Well, this show's really cool. We're going to move days on it now? What are we doing? Okay, now it's dead. Okay.
It was totally... That was one of their biggest issues with any of the shows on Fox, was the inconsistency with the days that they were going to have these shows on. But you never knew until you got a TV guide. By the way, for anyone who doesn't know what that is, it was a book that came out. Like, and it would have your channels, ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox.
And it would specialize it for your area.
Yes. And they would literally tell you what was playing at what time.
It was a magazine subscription, which was a big deal at the time, and you would subscribe to TV Guide so you could get that. And the most important issue of TV Guide was the fall preview, where you got to see what cool shows were going to come a couple weeks before they actually aired. So you would know, you'd go through and like, okay, on Monday nights, I'm going to watch this. And on Tuesday nights, we're going to, this is on. Also, this conflicts with this. Oh my gosh.
Don't forget. Yeah, because they would have them like in time. So 7 o'clock, NBC, ABC, CBS. So you could say, okay, I want to watch this at this time and this at this time. If you had all the channels, we did not. We only had ABC or NBC and CBS, and then we'd have to go out and turn the antenna for whichever one we were wanting to watch.
Yep. I've done the antenna change.
I had to go up the road to my cousin's house to watch Fox because they were on top of a hill and we were in a valley. It was.
You should have put you a cord down to.
It was a thing. It was fine.
It was the thing. I remember those things. I remember the antenna that my father had. He had vice grips on it to make it easier to turn the antenna, and they rusted to it. And so the vice grips are rusted onto it, and so you're turning it. And I remember doing that in the wintertime, and my father having the window open, and it's like negative 20 outside. Turn it just a little bit further to the right. Oh, no.
Go back. So I was the antenna turner.
Yes, me too.
And my sister was the window person, and my mom was in the hallway, and my dad was in the living room. And it was like a chain reaction. By the time it got to me, I had passed it. And then they'd be like, go back. So it was always fun. One of the best things about TV Guides, though, were the covers.
Yes, had great covers. Yes,
always fun because people, you could see what was going to happen.
People would save those covers and have just hundreds of thousands of issues.
I would love to have a TV Guide collection. I'm not just going to throw that out there because some of those were amazing.
They're great, and occasionally, a lot of times it was pictures of your favorite people or something else, and they were really cool. And occasionally you would get an animated one. where someone is hand drawn somebody or something, and it'd be really cool. So
characters of it was fun.
Character cover there. All right, so we've got one more animated Spidey thing here for us,
and of course, one you said you forgot, and then
I don't know how I forgot. I was going through my head on cartoons that I saw on TV, and then of course, well, how can we forget?
Wrong one.
Is that the wrong one?
Yeah, you have Miles Morales up.
Yeah, isn't that the one we wanted to go with?
Oh, is that it? Okay.
That's it. Yeah, this is the one that I forgot was Miles Morales. And it wasn't because I don't like Miles. I love Miles. And actually, I've not seen this movie yet. I'm
what? Professor.
I haven't gone to the movies. I keep waiting for it to come out on Disney or whatever streaming service so I can watch it. Anyway, but the first one I saw in the theaters.
Spider-Verse.
It's incredible movie. I've heard this one is just as incredible. I remember all the trailers for it. So it's a new take on Spider-Man. It is using computer generation to do the art. And the CGI.
The art is not your typical computer generated art either. Like it's not. It's very like artistic. It's very.
Yes. It is.
It's. Sorry, my dog is like wanting attention. It looks hand painted. It does splattered. It looks, all of that stuff. Also, it is a different Spider-Man. It's Miles Morales,
right?
Versus Peter Parker. Everyone we've talked about so far has been Peter Parker.
Even though we do get Peter in here,
you do, and you get variations in both of these of different Spider-Men, both Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse have, Spider-Gwen, Peter Parker, Spider-Man, Miles Morales. You have Spider-Punk in this one, who I love. I love.
Oh yeah.
Riley in this one. I didn't like how he was portrayed, but that's okay.
Riley from Spider-Man 2099.
Yes. But it's visually, it's my favorite cartoon version of Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Because it looks beautiful and I saw it on the IMAX big screen. So here in Branson. So it looked, because of that, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful, like colors and vivid and everything. And I know I am still a hand-drawn girl. Like I still love the hand-drawn cartoons, but this one is done so well. It is just done in a lovely way, I guess. Plus, you get all the characters.
You do. There's a lot of cool characters. Some of these characters are introduced in a series within Spider-Man comics called the Spider-Verse, and so they've really adapted that storyline, which is a really awesome storyline. They introduced a lot of variations to Spider-Man, and some of them had already existed. Spider-Ham had already existed. Yep. Spider-Noir, which I love. Of course, I'm going to love that, right? It hits two of my loves, so boom, there we go.
It's like,
yeah. So, and of course, Spider-Gwen, who's just adorable and amazing.
She's my hero.
And she's in a freaking rock band, so
yeah. And this one is I know you haven't seen it, but it's really good, and I love seeing all the different Spider-Men. Like all of them. Anyone that I can, like, I'm sure they missed some because there's so many, but anyone that I could think of was there, and then ones that I didn't even think of were there.
Right.
So if you love Spider-Man, you're gonna have one or two that you love from this. Miles Morales is probably, I will always love Peter Parker, but I am growing, like every time I read a different Miles comic, or every time I see the movies or whatever, I grow to love him even more. Like it's a thing. He has become one of my favorite Spider-Man
heroes. Yeah, right.
And I think what it is he's he's also very fallible. He's a kid.
Right.
And he reminds me a lot of the first adaptation of Peter Parker.
Yes.
But with his own unique personality. And I really like that. So these are movies, though. Those two are movies versus like TV shows.
Right.
But if you guys haven't seen them and you like Spider-Man even a little bit, like, you definitely go check them out.
Agreed. They are incredible, at least the first one. And again, I've been wanting to see the second one. It's on my list. I knew it was going to be I knew that it was not going to be a letdown from the first one, so I'm looking forward to seeing it soon.
I liked it better than the first one.
Really? Okay. So there you go. I will give you my judgment once I'm able to see it. So, but yeah, I'm excited to see it. So now we're going to go into live action versions of Spider-Man throughout the years. And here's one that I forgot and that we didn't talk about before. And then it came to me that we're missing one. So, you know this one?
I do know that one.
It's Electric Company Spider-Man.
Oh my gosh.
He didn't talk. He didn't talk at all. And he would just throw a net on people.
So bad.
It was.
It was
really bad.
It was not Spider-Man. It was an actor in a Spider-Man suit, who obviously they couldn't get the suit to look right if he talked. Like any facial expression, the suit would like wrinkle in a weird way.
Right.
It was not good, and he did not. He was not swinging in to save anybody. He wasn't.
No.
He was literally probably one of the worst adaptations of Spider-Man.
Agreed.
Ever. But I will say this: funny. It is funny to go back and watch it.
It is funny. Yeah, I agree.
Sometimes
it did introduce some kids to Spider-Man that maybe didn't know him before. They got them into reading comics or got them into looking at other versions of Spider-Man. But
I think he might have turned people off from Spider-Man.
When you're a little kid, for an adult, that would be true. And for those that don't know, Electric Company was a kids show that ran in the 70s and the 80s. Had a lot of big name stars on that show. A lot of big names on there, and it was meant to kind of teach kids things. And they would throw Spider-Man in there, and somebody would come up and talk to him. Spider-Man, you think blah blah blah, don't you? Okay. And you throw a net on a bad guy.
And not even web.
No, it wasn't even web.
A net, but Electric Company was. I will say this: I watched it a lot as a kid. It was a lot of fun. It was funny. It was kind of. So Sesame Street, which I also loved as a kid. This was kind of that, like, you feel a little too old for Sesame Street, so you're gonna come in and watch Electric Company.
Right.
I remember watching it in class in kindergarten.
Right.
Like the teacher turned it on. So
yep. I remember there were shows like that, and that was a big deal back then. They were using technology they really hadn't used before. Because I remember 3-2-1 Contact was a show as we got into like fourth grade to teach science stuff. But for me, it wasn't so much Electric Company; it was the Captain Kangaroo was kind of my stepping stone that I loved. But I did remember I would turn over and watch Electric Company and then hope to see Spider-Man and then be disappointed in it. I do remember that going, really? That's Spider-Man? So then we got a iteration in the 70s of Spider-Man. Hey, how you doing? If my kitty would come in, if Nico would come in, which I'm calling her Nico, even though
that's the thing.
That's still being debated on what her kitty's name is, because my wife wants one name and I want another. And she put a poll up on Facebook and my name won in a landslide, and she's still denying it.
Put them together.
And she doesn't want to do that either. So anyway, here
walking into his drama with his cat. We're just not.
No. But I love my cat. She's really cute, little cute kitty. as most cats are, she's on, especially kitten, she's ornery. All right, so this is the live-action Spider-Man from 1977.
Right. Super funny.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's very, I mean, look at that suit, it's the 70s, right?
Look at the collar. Look at the collar.
Yeah, the collar, right? Exactly. Check out the collar. So, interestingly, I was doing some reading on this a while back, and Stan Lee hated this series.
I know. I read that.
Hated it. He would go in on set and try to convince him that this is how you need to work with Spider-Man. Nope, we're not doing that. Well, he needs to have a villain like this. Nope, we're not doing that. We're going to do this. So a lot of the plot is not very good.
It's not well written.
No. It
does not have a storyline that is Spider-Man-like.
Right. It does not.
It has a storyline, but it's not the storyline you even think of with Spider-Man. The costuming was not great.
But not as bad as Electric Company, but still not great.
No, I mean the costuming altogether. Like
you can tell it's definitely Spider-Man there. It looks like a Spider-Man costume at least there. So, but yeah.
The thing is like the costuming altogether. Like Spider-Man, the great thing about how Stan Lee did Spider-Man is he's drawn in a way that you don't know what decade he's from.
Right.
This is definitely 70s. Like
this is so 70s.
Like powder blue suits with like giant triangle collars on the shirt.
And that was the style of the time that everybody did. But
unfortunately, people now have to look back on that.
The last season of Wonder Woman is that way too, where you're like,
I know. It's terrible. It's terrible. I don't know. I watched this and I watched it as I was older. I found it and watched it as I was older.
Oh, that was your mistake.
I was only one when this came out, so I wasn't into comic books yet. I was just a toddler. It's fine. Right. Now I just aged myself. Yes, I was born in 76. I'm just throwing that out there. It's fine. But
I was old enough to watch this live, so we'll throw that out there too.
It was not great as an adult.
No, even so I was 7 when this came out, so to age myself there. And I remember as a kid so excited because I love Spider-Man so much by this time. Love Spider-Man. And I remember watching it going, not very exciting. It's kind of boring.
It was very boring.
Why did he do that? That's not something that Spider-Man would do or Peter would do. And a 7-year-old thinking that, right? So I think it was a opportunity that was missed by the network because Stan Lee wanted to go and fix it and they wouldn't let him. And instead they got and the actor is a really nice guy. So it's not him. The guy who played Peter Parker is really cool. I actually like his fit. He actually looks like a, college or post-college Peter Parker to me. I'm like, he actually looks the part. He looked
the part. I mean, a little cheesier, but that was the 70s. The hair and stuff is a little cheesier.
Exactly.
I also think like the big problem is like this came out in 77, and in 78 you have the Incredible Hulk.
Right.
TV show, which was still cheesy. However, you had that change, like that, you know what I mean? So I just think that they didn't push the envelope enough with this show. They didn't bring in enough Spider-Man and villains to do it. And then you, like a year later, you get the Incredible Hulk, and it was a success. This was not a success. The Incredible Hulk.
You're exactly right. It was a success for the Hulk.
And, I mean, I have issues with the Incredible Hulk, too. I don't like that they changed his name, but that's fine, whatever.
And the reason why is really funny. But
his name was too gay.
My cousin Bruce would be offended by that.
They literally changed his name because they said Bruce was too gay of a name. And see, the younger kids now are like, well, Bruce Jenner. Okay, but that was before Bruce Jenner.
Well, Bruce Jenner, I don't think is gay. He's just transgendered.
He's transgender. I know.
Anyway, we'll go past that.
You know what I mean? Like, it was weird.
Well, and the weird thing is Bruce Jenner was considered to be a manly man because he was a triathlon gold medal winner.
But why did they change his name? I had a problem with that. However, success-wise, the Incredible Hulk blew this one out of the water.
Yeah, completely.
It was mediocre versus really good. I think that they did it right because they kept the Hulk's characteristics, and this one did not keep Spider-Man's characteristics as much.
Agreed.
And it's sad because I think if they would have given Stanley some power over it, it could have potentially been one of the best.
Right,
because
agreed.
Stanley at the time was having some amazing ideas. He was,
yes, he was
into creating more of a universe with Spider-Man and more depth and all of that around this time. And if they would have taken that into consideration and actually listened to him, this could have been amazing. And that was not a pun. That was
no pun intended, but yes, it could have been amazing. No, so we'll leave this one behind, just like the 70s in powder blue suits. And say, at least it was the only thing I could ever say, at least it's something and not nothing. But in fact, I said that a lot in the 70s and 80s about comic book stuff and sci-fi stuff and a lot of stuff. Anyway, so let's move on. So we're going to go to the very late 90s, like 1999. And now I'm singing Prince in my head. We're going to go to 1999. I believe it was 1999, if I'm remembering right. And go into Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire.
I mean, yeah. So I had a problem with that one too, but
sure. No, tell us your problems. Tell us what you think.
So unfortunately, I think Spider-Man and Batman have the same problem when you're trying to portray them. The actor is either a really good Peter Parker and not a great Spider-Man. Same with he's a really good Bruce Wayne and not a great Batman, or it's vice versa. Right. And Tobey Maguire kind of fell into that.
He did.
I don't think there's anything wrong with the script. There are some issues that I have with some of the portrayals of the characters, but I don't think anybody did a bad job. It wasn't it's just terrible. But I felt, one, I don't like when they skip part of Spider-Man's origin story. I don't like them skipping things. I don't like them skipping people, taking people out completely. I don't like that. If you're going to tell the origin story that's comic accurate, it needs to be the origin story that's comic accurate. And none of them have done that correctly. Right. Except for Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse with Miles Morales, when Peter Parker talks about his origin story. So we're going to throw that out there. Tobey Maguire is not who I would ever have cast as Spider-Man. He made a decent Peter Parker.
He did.
Because he was awkward and a little nerdy looking and, still cute. He wasn't too nerdy, but and physically his build was correct.
Right.
And he could play younger because he was a little older at the time, so he could play younger. It just, when he put on the suit, I didn't feel like he hit the mark for Spider-Man.
No, it does. I thought he was decent, but he wasn't great as Spider-Man.
Right.
That's what I felt like. I felt like I really enjoyed a lot of his portrayal of Peter.
Yes.
The side characters I thought were amazing. Now, I look back at the origin story of this one, and they did the wrestling. He let the bad guy get away. Uncle Ben gets shot. Right. So, I mean, you nail some of those things there with the origin story. He makes his own suit. He does all those things. So I felt like that things I did not like is that they made his webbing a part of him rather than mechanical.
Right.
And I know that ended up being part of the comics, and they were pulling it from there. I did not like that, but I'm a traditionalist, but I could get past that. When he was Spider-Man, there were some fun moments, but he didn't have the one-liners, and he didn't have the interaction. He didn't go from Peter Parker to a whole new character of Spider-Man. He basically was still Peter Parker in a Spider-Man suit.
Right, and that can work if you but you have to bring the right parts of Peter Parker to Spider-Man. You have to bring like the excitement, the little nervousness, the people pleasing. All of those things translate from Peter Parker to Spider-Man.
Right.
He brought like Peter Parker's personality in the Spider-Man suit.
Right. When
Peter puts on the suit, yeah, he's still Peter Parker, but he has a little bit more confidence. He has a little bit more, like cockiness. He can say stuff that Peter Parker thinks because no one knows who he is.
Right.
So
he's very quick-witted as Spider-Man.
Yes,
where
I just feel
Peter
like
doesn't show that.
Yeah, he didn't because Peter's always afraid that he's going to disappoint people, and he's a nervous kid and all of that. So I think that's the problem I had with Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man is
I agree.
He didn't change any when he put the suit on.
Right.
So it wasn't bad. It was just not my favorite.
So the first two movies, in my opinion, were really well done. Yes, I agree with everything you've said, problem-wise.
Yeah.
But up to this point, of course, we don't have much to compare it to here.
Right.
Up to this point, this was amazing. Again, not pun intended. But, I mean, so we had the X-Men live action, and we had, of course, the Batman movie in '89, and then Batman Returns, and then it got crazy. But our live action superheroes really had not been done very well. Now we've had so many instances of live action superheroes done so well that we're not even paying attention to them when they come out, which is kind of crazy. But back here, we were starved for anything that even resembled our heroes on live screen. Yeah. And this movie did it. The first two. The third movie is a hot piece of steaming crap.
I think the third movie was just the studio's.
Oh, it was, yeah.
It was literally there was no the studio saying cash cow, cash cow, cash cow.
Right.
And that's a problem, and we see it so many times with movies that when the passion behind a project is gone and money is the reason for the project, it always lets fans down. It does.
It does.
I mean, I didn't hate it. I just felt like, and
story-wise, it was horrible.
Yeah. Oh, I meant all three. I didn't hate it.
Oh, right.
But it kept getting like it went from okay to like less. But I will say, I did like the looks of the villains.
Right.
Like I liked the looks of the villains. They got the looks right. Even Spider-Man, even Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, the look was right.
It was right. And he looked good when he was swinging, and he did all sorts of cool stuff. I think Spider-Man 2 is probably the best of the three. I liked 1 a lot, and then 2 I thought was even better. I loved Doc Ock in that one.
Doc Ock was so scary too. Like I remember seeing that movie on the big screen, and we took Dakota, and we went in, And I remember there were kids behind us who got so scared when Doc Ock came onto the screen, they had to leave the theater.
Right.
Because but I liked that. That was, he's supposed to be a scary villain. Like, he's
I agree.
And I liked that. And that's why I said I liked the villains. I liked what they did with the villains. All three of the movies. I think that the third movie did not have a storyline that fit what they could have done. Like, they could have made it so much better.
They had a story that got cut from that and a lot of other stuff. So I don't blame the directors or the writers. I know that was kind of forced by the studio trying to cash in on Venom, trying to cash in on this and that. And they basically sunk themselves because of pushing it. Now, so I will say, let me say this. The betrayal of Harry, the betrayal of J. Jonah Jameson was absolutely amazing. And to me, the best Aunt May ever, and I'm sorry, Marissa Tomei, I love you, but
we'll get into that later.
But this is the Aunt May I expect.
Right.
Aunt May here with her praying by the bedside for protection and the Green Goblin blowing up. This is for other comic books. This Aunt May is the Aunt May that I grew up with, and that Peter would die for. And like I said, in JJ, I just love it. I'm just like, oh, and I'm so glad they brought him back, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But my gosh, you got a lot of stuff right. There were things that were wrong, but the casting was really good for the side characters.
I think, and Tobey Maguire was cast correct. Of the actors that were available at the time, who probably went out for the role, I think Tobey Maguire was, looks-wise, very on par with what I expected. I just think that, and I don't know if it was the script or the acting. I'm not blaming him per se. I don't know if it was the script or the acting, but I think that he did not translate that switch.
Agreed. No, I agree.
As I thought.
When he put on the mask, it didn't change his personality to the point.
And it tweaks it. Like, Spider-Man tweaks it. He doesn't...
Right. No, I agree. But it brings it up to a level. And Spider-Man villains hate that he's witty, always talking at them, saying stupid things, and just...
He's a smart-ass kid. He's a smart-ass kid, but he's smart.
Yes. And he uses that against him. So villains hate that. So we're going to move on to a movie series that shows that really, really well in the Amazing Spider-Man movies. These two movies. And the betrayal of Spider-Man when he puts on the mask with the quick wit and doing all that, it's in here. It is so incredible how well it does.
Right.
The Peter Parker in here.
Okay. So Andrew Garfield made an amazing Spider-Man. He made a poor choice for an origin story teenage Peter Parker. I say to this day, if they would have taken him and made him the college age Peter Parker, it would have worked a lot better. But
I still don't think his look was right. I don't think his attitude was right.
He was too moody.
Well, not only moody, he was a skateboard character.
Right.
He rode a skateboard. And again, nothing against skateboarders. That's not Peter Parker. Peter Parker is the science nerd. Right. Peter Parker is not the cool kid with the cool hair.
And that's why I said, so Peter Parker, especially origin story, Peter Parker is awkward. He's a science kid. He's nerdy. When you get into college age Peter Parker, he has a little bit more confidence.
He does.
He, has been saving people for a while. He, has got over, for the most part, most of his demons. Right. But at the time of the college age Peter Parker, and he's more confident. He has a relationship. Right. He's more confident in it. whereas origin story Peter Parker is not there yet.
Right.
And I think Andrew Garfield played him too cool. Too cool for
very much too cool.
And
but even college age Peter wasn't that cool.
No, but
he was more confident, yes, but he was not. I mean, he would have never had that haircut.
No, but it would have translated better if they would have made him the older Peter
Parker. Agreed. I agree completely.
So, like, okay, but he might be going through a phase in college, but it's not the phase he was going through in high school. And
well, at least it's not the emo phase from Spider-Man 3. With the dancing.
I can't. So I always say like, I said it when they came out, like, I was like, Tobey makes great Peter Parker, not good Spider-Man. And Andrew Garfield made not a good Peter Parker, a really good Spider. Like, I really like his quick wit and his, the way he moved was the way I think Spider-Man should move. And
right.
Tobey was a little bit more stiff and not as, which I just feel like it didn't translate on screen as well as Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man. So yeah.
So let's talk about the side characters in here. Our versions of Gwen Stacy, Captain Stacy, and Aunt May in here. Because they're a little different. Aunt May's definitely a little different here by Sally Fields. And then you have the death of Uncle Ben. It's portrayed in such a...
It was weird.
Weird way. And then the phone call thing. That just bugged me.
I did. And that's why I said that all of the movies that portray, like, the origin story, do it wrong because they mess something up. So, Tobey Maguire's, you don't even know about Gwen Stacy.
Right.
She doesn't exist in his universe.
Right.
Fine.
Well, until the third one.
I know, but that's weird. It's not the right
horrible. Thing. It's a horrible Gwen Stacy.
This one you have Gwen Stacy, which was right, but then Uncle Ben and his death was wrong.
Right.
So these are comic books. If you're going to do a comic book movie, that you're going to do the origin story, which, by the way, with characters like this, we don't need an origin story 100 million times. We don't. We know the origin story. But if you're going to do it right, because there's a reason that these are their origin stories. And these are the things that people, this is canon.
Right.
And this is things that people know. So when you miss something, or you make it weird, or you change it completely, or you cut out a character who's quintessential to why Spider-Man is who he is, Gwen Stacy and the Tobey Maguire ones, when you cut her out at the beginning of his origin story, you're cutting out his character. And I think that I have a problem with that as a comic book fan.
Agreed. Well, and you can't, and I realize that the original 3 Spider-Man movies, with great power comes great responsibility, is something that gets hammered.
Right.
But you can't have Uncle Ben dying without that being a key fixture. You can't just kind of step around it like they did. And I'm like, that was the weirdest thing ever. And like, well, we didn't want to use that because it was so big in the last 3 movies. Because it's his mantra for life.
And here's the thing, they could have used it. They could have not had. So I didn't like Uncle Ben saying it, because in the comic book, Uncle Ben does not say it. Spider-Man thinks it.
Right.
It's the first aspect
you're right.
of the comic book where a character is having a thought that we can read. And it was, with great power comes great responsibility after Uncle Ben dies.
Right. You're right.
It is.
Now, Uncle Ben does say it to him later.
Yes.
In ghost form at various points in Spider-Man. But you're right. It does not happen in that part.
But you don't even put it in there?
Right. And you make Uncle Ben say something that's similar but different, and you're talking around it, and you're like, that was
just
the
go for it
most awkward.
It's so weird because you should
just leave it out at that point. Don't even. What are you doing?
I would have rather them cut it out. I would have rather them not have it happen at all. And then at some point, like Peter thinks, this is what Uncle Ben would have wanted. With great power comes great responsibility. Right, something like that would have been way more powerful than
Uncle Ben always taught me this when I was younger. Yes, something. Right.
But rewriting it and Uncle Ben's death was weird in that one anyway. I'm just
very weird. Very, very weird.
I don't like how it happened.
No, I agree. I agree.
Physically, how it was acted out.
No, I completely agree. It was just bizarre. So tell me, what's your feelings on Gwen Stacy and Captain Stacy in these movies?
Well, okay, so I love Emma. I think she did an amazing job.
I do too. I think she nailed the essence of Gwen Stacy. When I see her on the screen, even though originally I'm like, why wasn't she Mary Jane? She should have been the original Mary Jane because she's a beautiful natural redhead.
Right.
Anyway, but my gosh, Gwen Stacy. I'm like, okay, I forgot why I love Gwen Stacy.
Exactly. And I love Captain Stacy in it as well. I think it was a little off from the comic books he was, but I don't hate what they did with him. It's weird because Andrew and Emma dated at this time, but I don't think their chemistry came across on the screen as much as it should.
I agree.
And I actually find that funny because so many times when I watch movies and the actor and actress are dating, it doesn't translate to the movie.
Right.
And this one didn't, which is weird.
Agree.
I think Tobey Maguire had more on-screen chemistry with his Mary Jane.
No, I agree.
But I think that Emma did an amazing job with Gwen Stacy. So
I would love to see her brought back as Spider-Gwen. Oh my gosh.
Like an older Spider-Gwen?
Yes. I would so be in love with that. Because I think she did great. Now, Captain Stacy, I really enjoyed Captain Stacy up until he looks at Peter and says the exact opposite of what he says in the comics to him.
Right.
And I'm like, but you just changed everything on its head. So in the movie, you have Captain Stacy saying, "I know you're Spider. I know you're Peter. Stay away from her so she doesn't get hurt." Right. All this. In the comic books, it's, "Son, I know you're Peter. Take care of my girl. Always be there for her."
It changed his character too much.
Completely the opposite of what is said, which also leads to the heartbreak of Gwen Stacy dying, is that Peter blamed himself for Captain Stacy dying already in the comics, and then he could never get past it to talk to Gwen about, and as he's about to go talk to her, she's taken by the goblin, and then her death happens, and so it's a double trauma for him.
And that's the thing, because they messed it up, because part of the thing with Peter Parker, and we've talked about this, Spider-Man is fallible. And part of the thing is he lives and breathes on his guilt on stuff. And I know that sounds weird, but it is his motivation. Uncle Ben, Captain Stacy saying, "Take care of my girl." And then she dies.
Right.
It is not, and dies because of him, because of his involvement with her. It is the driving force behind this superhero is not, revenge. Batman is kind of revengey. Let's throw that out there. He's kind of revengey.
Justice.
Yeah, Superman is just I always say, he's the Boy Scout. He's been taught to just do good.
Except for the DC movies, and then it's anyway.
But in the comics, he's the Boy Scout. Although there have been times that he's been not good.
No, I agree.
And he has moods and he has stuff, but traditionally he's the Boy Scout. And Spider-Man, though, is fallible and he's a kid. And so, you know how like they always say like kids blame themselves when their parents get divorced. They blame themselves when something bad happens. They take that all in on themselves.
Right, it's personal.
He showcases that in a way that's
He does.
I agree with you. I think Captain Stacy was acted very well. I think the script let him down.
Agreed. Well, and so then in the second movie, instead of having it to where he has to make sure he's taking care of her and nothing's going to happen, and still having that fail, you have the I'm going to rebel against what her dad's wishes were, and then she dies.
It's not a Peter Parker thing to do.
Kind of.
If Peter Parker would have promised a dying man who he respected that he would stay away from his daughter, he would have stayed away from his daughter.
He would have stayed away so far.
Yeah.
He would have done everything he could to keep that from happening.
Yeah.
And so
that's just how he is. And that's the other thing about Peter Parker is, yes, he has Aunt May, he had Uncle Ben, but those are not his parents.
Right.
Captain Stacy became a surrogate dad to him in several ways. There was no way that Peter Parker is going to go against the dying wish of a man he thought of as a fatherly figure.
Right. Exactly. So he had huge respect for him. Yeah.
When they did that, they changed the story of Peter Parker, and they changed the story of Gwen, and they changed the story of Captain Stacy with just one line in a movie.
Right. But it's an important line that reverses everything.
Yeah, it changed everything. So I agree with you. But I don't think that acting wise and on the screen wise, I don't think any of those things were like the actors weren't bad.
I agree. I didn't love Aunt May. I'll be honest, but again,
I love Sally Fields. So.
Well, I like Sally Fields, but I'm like, it's not my Aunt May. My Aunt May was in the last 3 movies. I mean, it was the perfect Aunt May. So I come to that, and that's fine. I can get past that and the weirdness. So tell me what you thought about the villains here, though.
I liked the villains. I think in every Spider-Man live action movie, I think that the villains are where they get it right more.
Right.
I like the looks of the villains so much. Like there's so many things that you're like look at that. And this is again some practical and computer, but it's some practical when it comes to FX. And so I like that. I like that mix of it. I don't want everything to be computer generated.
Right.
I think that the storylines for the villains got a little messy.
Okay. Yep. That I agree with. Yeah.
Like I feel like they tried to tell the stories in a way I hadn't read them before, and I didn't quite like that. But I think the looks of the villains were good. I think the fight scenes were really good.
Yeah.
That's true. Was good, but I think that the stories. I think that Tobey Maguire's version of Spider-Man, they got the villain stories better than they did in Andrew Garfield's.
Agreed with that, except for the third one.
We're forgetting that one. That one does not.
I'd like to forget it, most definitely.
That's like the Electric Company Spider-Man. We forget it exists.
So the Lizard one I thought was pretty cool. Now, what I would have liked to have seen was a little more Doc Connors in there. I didn't think they focused on his character that much. And I really would have liked to have seen the more human side of the Lizard there, of how he's fighting with that. I would have loved that.
Right.
But okay, I can get past that. Then we go to the second one, and we have our pseudo-goblin with Harry, and that's just a cluster of bizarreness.
Yeah.
In their version of Norman and what's going on there,
I think it was cast right. I think they were cast right. I don't think they were written right.
I agree with that. Because the storyline was
messy. It was messy. It was,
and then
all of it.
Electro storyline and the Electro, even his look, I had a really hard time with that. I'm like, I want the big yellow headpiece, and I want and I knew I was going to get that, but I could get past that. But what really bothered me in it was Harry as the Green Goblin, which in the comics Harry becomes a Green Goblin. I don't have a bit of problem with them making him Green Goblin.
It's
but the reasoning why, right? That was
the way he got there, and that's
weird.
It was forced.
Yes.
It was not a natural, like in the comics. It becomes, there are these reasons that add up,
and it's a long period of time to get there. It's not overnight
process. It is not just one thing and then I'm gonna be like turn my back on my friend and all of this stuff. It was forced, and again, I think it was acted correctly. I think the look was okay, like it was good. It was not as good as Tobey Maguire. I think the villains look better in the Tobey Maguire version, but it was cast correctly. I think it was acted correctly. I just think that it was written badly and messy, and I didn't have a cohesion that made sense. And you didn't have the motivation. And a lot of the times people forget that these characters have backstories and they have motivation. And these movies, both of them, lacked villain motivation.
Agreed. All right, so let's move on to the last set of movies here. And I think we can agree we finally get a good balance of Peter Parker and Spider-Man in the Homecoming series.
Yes.
So, even though I do have one complaint for all three series.
Okay.
This head. Spider-Man does not take off his mask and reveal himself to anybody. The one time he did that, he ended up getting Aunt May shot and killed, and they had a reverse time and end his marriage and all sorts of really bizarre stuff in the comics.
So my husband has that same issue with these movies. Like when he goes in and Nick Fury's like, everyone knows who you are, you can take the mask off. Spider-Man never would have done that.
No, never. Never, ever. In fact, in the Secret Wars where you got all these people doing that, Spider-Man is eating by rolling his mask up here so he can eat.
Yes.
He never reveals who he is.
I do agree with that. It does bother me a lot because it's a thing. And now that I've seen the other movie, the first one and the second, now that I've seen them, and I know, that his secret was out and everything, maybe that was a choice that they made to help with that secret being out. Because, it's Marvel, and Disney's Marvel, so they kind of had a plan. So it might have been something like that. Right. I think creatively it was wrong. But I will say Tom Holland, out of every Spider-Man that's ever been like on media, is the closest to what my heart and my mind goes to with a Spider-Man.
Right, I agree.
And he is awkward, nerdy, good looking, but not like way good looking. You know what I mean? Like not too. He looks young.
Right.
They didn't do an origin story. They skipped a couple. Like they skipped some. So he's already to the Spider-Man thing, which I liked. And Tom Holland as a person, we know from like when they talk about the movies, Tom Holland is very Peter Parker-like.
He is.
He can't even be interviewed by himself because he will spill the beans.
Which I love. I love when they get these actors who are very much their characters. You're like, oh my gosh.
Perfectly cast. Physically, he's small. He looks a lot younger than he is, so he can portray that, 16, 17, 18-year-old kid.
Right.
without your mind going, like Andrew Garfield looked a lot older. That was also an issue I had with him. But he looks the part. He is sleek, and I mean that like he has a dancer's body, which is, he is a dancer, which also helps with those movements. His movements are smooth when he's Spider-Man and awkward when he's Peter Parker. So yes, out of every Spider-Man, I think that Tom Holland is my favorite because I feel like he bridges Peter Parker and Spider-Man in the best possible way.
Right. And it feels like he knows those two differences of those characters too.
Yes.
So, and he knows how to act it. So I love Tom Holland as Spider-Man. He's just, it just does my heart well to see him because he wants to please, he wants to do all the stuff, but he puts on the mask and he's finding a bad guy, and he is saying all those things. He's in the back seat with the Vulture driving him, and he realizes the Vulture, and he's like, oh crap. But if he had the mask on, then he would be doing all sorts of stuff.
Right.
I really, really like these movies.
And it's written like a comic.
Yeah, it is.
It's written like a comic.
It's pretty much written like the Ultimate Universe Spider-Man.
Yes.
Before Miles takes over.
Right.
For those. Anyway. But it does. It reads that. It feels that way. It feels like the Ultimate Spider-Man.
I love that they did the Vulture.
Yeah.
In the first movie, I loved that. Also, anytime I see that man on screen, I'm a happy person. I just love that. I love that he's played Batman and the Birdman and the Vulture. Like they're all winged animals.
They are. Well, I was just watching The Flash earlier, and went.
I haven't seen that one yet.
It's on Max streaming for anybody that has Max streaming.
On my list.
I've got issues with it, but my issues are not with Michael Keaton playing an older Batman. I'm like,
no,
give me that all day long. More, please give me more.
I loved that the dialogue between those two, when he figures out he's the Vulture, and when he figures out he's Spider-Man, like the dialogue is witty.
It is. It's very witty.
I love that.
I love the awkwardness when he goes to his house to pick up MJ.
Right.
And I loved all of that. That to me was, and the whole reason why he gets the technology to be the Vulture is kind of cool. He's not old man Vulture like in the original Spider-Man. Right. He is more of the ultimate version of Vulture, which is pretty cool. So I got past that because the first time I'm like, well, he's supposed to be a really old man, and I'm like, okay, not with the ultimate.
Yeah, he's more ultimate, and that's how Tom Holland's version of Spider-Man in my head is the ultimate.
Yeah, I agree. For those that don't know, there was a second universe in the comic books where they wanted to reboot and kind of retell their stories, but in a different universe so they could go play without messing up the current universe. They didn't have to reboot everything. And it was called the Ultimate Universe. It was around for about 10 years, and then they did this weird thing where they mashed in universes, kind of like what DC did in the 80s, in fact. Yep. And then you have characters sliding over like Miles, which becomes another Spider-Man version in the comic. So for those who don't know what we're talking about with the Ultimates, it was just a different take on the same characters, but in a different universal world.
Right. And it kind of hit in the second when they have all like Toby and Andrew come back.
Yeah, they do in the third movie, yeah.
Yeah, the third, and they come back and they're like they're helping and that mesh of like all the universes. I think they hint a lot that this is supposed to be the Ultimate Universe.
I agree.
Some of the things that happen, and listen, anytime I would be happy if Tom Holland got to play Spider-Man for the next 10 years.
I agree. I agree. Yes.
So you always ask about the villains. I think that the villains in the Tom Holland, I think, are fleshed out a lot more.
I agree.
I understand the motivation behind them a lot more.
Yep.
I think it's fun in 3 that you get to see the villains from the other movies,
right?
From Toby and Andrew, and you get to see that, and you get to have them be more fleshed out, which was something that was missing in those movies. Like they rectified the situation.
Right.
They gave them a redemption kind of thing. And the thing with Spider-Man is he hates fighting. He hates fighting.
Right.
Spider-Man fights because he has to fight. Because he's driven to do good. But he does not actually enjoy, like Batman enjoys fighting.
Right.
Peter Parker does not enjoy fighting. Like if he could find a peaceful way to do something, he would find a peaceful way to do something.
It has. There's times where he's figured out how to bridge those gaps.
In the 3rd movie, I think Tom Holland plays it so well, that aspect of Peter Parker, because a lot of the times we forget superhero movies, not all superheroes just want to go out and fight.
Right. Exactly.
He does that really well.
I agree. So what do you think of the side characters here? What do you think of MJ? What do you think of Aunt May, JJ in this one?
Okay, I still love JJ.
Right, because it's the same actor. For those who didn't know, the same actor from the original 3 was so popular and was quintessentially J. Jonah Jameson, just to the look, the attitude, everything. And he's amazing. So
you could have recast him, but it would have been a mistake.
It would have been a mistake because we've all said, but he did it better. What?
Where is he? Yeah.
Just like I do with Aunt May.
So I love Marissa Tomei.
I do too.
I have a problem with her as Aunt May. I know she's older. Like, I get it. She's the age that Aunt May is supposed to be. She literally is the age that Aunt May is supposed to be in the comics.
And people look younger now than what they did at that. I swear people were old in the 70s that when they hit 50, they just looked like they were going to die at any point.
Right.
And now look at us. Well, not you, but look at me. I'm 50 now plus, and I don't look like somebody's grandfather.
Exactly. And I'm a grandma, and I don't look like a grandma. So there's
right, exactly.
But that being said, part of Aunt May's appeal with me is that she looks frail, but she has so much strength that
she does. Internal strength. Yeah. Agreed.
Marissa does lend strength to him. However, she doesn't look frail, like ever.
No, never frail. You're not going to have those issues of the comic where Peter is visiting Aunt May at the hospital. Is not sure how he's going to pay the bills and how he's going to pay the hospital bill, how he's going to pay the rent. You don't have any of that with this.
No. And Aunt May is very smart in the comics, and not that Marissa isn't. She's very smart as well, but it's a different kind of smart.
Right.
If that makes sense. Marissa also doesn't give that motherly feel as much.
Right. It's almost like the
she's an aunt feel. A cool aunt.
It very much an aunt feel. Like, okay, well, you're going to do that. That's okay. I'll let you do that in your room. Okay, I'm going to go.
Right. And Aunt May wasn't about that. Aunt May was very motherly, like
she was
almost helicopter parent motherly.
She was. Well, and it was her and her husband were never able to have kids, and they were blessed with having Peter at a pretty young age given to them because of what happened to his parents. And so she was his mother, basically, even though it wasn't physically a mother. And she was always his mother.
And she always wanted to be a mother. Like,
and going to make wheat cakes.
Yeah.
I'll make you some wheat cakes to fix that, honey.
She was like craving to be a mother. And Marissa Tomei as Aunt May doesn't give me that feeling that she was craving.
No, right.
It gives me the feeling like, oh, your parents passed away, and I took you in, and I'm taking care of you, but I'm the cool aunt.
Right. She's still a cool aunt. I agree.
Right. And Aunt May wasn't the cool aunt. She was the mom.
Now, in the Ultimate Comics, wasn't she a little more hip?
She was, but not to the point that Aunt May is.
No, I agree. That to me is the weakness of it, is how Aunt May is portrayed. And again, I love Marissa Tomei also, but the fact that you've got Tony Stark and Happy both hitting on you, and you've had a relationship with Happy that these are things that Peter Parker would have to worry about, right? I mean, he did have Doc Ock trying to marry Aunt May at one point, which was just bizarre. But
and JJ.
Well, and JJ, you're right.
But they're older.
Right.
So that part I don't necessarily love about these movies. However, because I love Happy so much in these movies, I don't have a problem as much with Aunt May, because I kind of like this Peter's reaction to Aunt May being a sexual being, because I feel like it's a kid's reaction.
Well, that's true. Yeah, I agree.
It's like, what? No, no.
No, don't even. No.
But I love Happy. Like, I think his character in it went from Iron Man. I actually like him more in Spider-Man than I did in Iron Man.
Right. Well, and he was very just a basic guy in the first Iron Man movie, and he really developed into more. They developed this character really well.
But I like his relationship with Peter, especially after Tony Stark's death. Right. Like, I feel like because he was really good friends with Tony, that he knew how much Tony loved this kid.
Right.
And I think it translates very well. Again, casting was done really well. He doesn't look like I think Happy should look like, but he acts like I think Happy should act.
Right.
Ned, I love Ned. I think Ned is hilarious. And I think Ned provides Peter that
man in the chair.
Yes. That sidekick that we don't get to see in any of the other movies with Peter Parker and Spider-Man. Now, Ned is a character from the comic books, and who Ned turns into is a totally different story. I'm waiting for that to happen, because that's a big thing. I thought that was going to be the storyline for 3 until I saw that Andrew Garfield and Toby were rumored, but we all knew it was going to happen. There, that I was like, they're not going to do that.
Broke it on our show a year ahead of it becoming official.
Yep. And because of that, when that was happening, and I knew that they were going to come in, I was like, oh, they're not going to do the Ned storyline, but they can, moving forward, go really great with Ned and Flash, because both Ned and Flash their characters really develop into something completely different.
Right, they do. The Flash Thomas development of a character is fascinating in the comics, because you go from the bully who just traumatizes Peter day after day
high school,
to becoming a very close friend, and then becoming a hero. Right. It's just it's a great redemption story. But anyway, so what do you think of MJ? So tell me about MJ.
Okay, so like when the casting was announced, I was disappointed. Right. I love Zendaya, and I have watched her since she was on Disney, with as Rocky in I can't remember the name of it, the one with Bella Thorne.
Right.
So because my kids love Disney, and I watch Disney all the time with them. But I think Zendaya is an amazing actress. I think she can play all kinds of roles. But when they said that she was going to be MJ, I thought Mary Jane.
Right. I did too, which I'm like, you can't do Mary Jane without being a redhead. I don't understand what we're doing here.
And she has done red hair, and I'm okay with that. And a lot of people had a problem with her not being white. I don't have a problem with that at all. I don't. But I was like, I don't understand how she's going to be Mary Jane, because I didn't see it in my head, because Mary Jane is a party girl. Mary Jane is like, I don't know, the life of the party. And
she is.
And she's very extrovert. She's very like, look at me, look at me, look at me. And when I saw the trailer for it, I was like, she's not playing that part.
Right.
She wasn't playing the party girl. She was playing like the nerdy girl. She's almost Gwen Stacy like in her personality.
Is.
She's like very like down to earth and very smart, and I was like, I'm not sure how that's going to happen. But then when I realized that she's not Mary Jane,
right?
She's MJ. I love her chemistry, not just with Tom Holland, and they're in a relationship too, but their chemistry translates on screen, which is very hard to do. But I love her chemistry with everybody else. I love her chemistry with Ned. Like her and Ned are both like, vying for Peter's attention kind of thing, but at the same time not. Like I love that. I feel like that's a very, very much what high school would be like if you were in a relationship and your best friend wants the attention and your girlfriend wants the attention, and it's like, it's a mix. I also liked her heart and the way she can convey her emotions, especially like in number 1 with like the Vulture and that whole storyline, and her working through her own emotions on that. So I'm okay with it now. It was a shock when they announced it.
Well, they didn't explain what they were doing with the character,
exactly.
Which is fine. I mean, that's perfectly fine.
They just said MJ, and everybody just goes Mary Jane, but she's not Mary Jane. She's MJ.
She's not. It's Michelle Jones. Yeah.
So I'm okay with that one. I'm okay. I think Flash is fun.
Flash is fun. I agree.
I don't think they've pushed it as far as the comics pushed it with his bullying.
Right.
But I think that is just kind of our cultural aspects of where we are as a culture now, that they wouldn't want to push it as far as the comics did, because he was a physical bully instead of just an emotional bully, which he's an emotional bully in these, but he was a physical bully. And I don't
which
think
is seen in the first set of movies.
Right.
Very much so.
Yeah, but I think that we've kind of are trying to not put that out there as much for our kids.
Right.
And I'm okay with that, because he's still a bully. He's still insecure. Flash was always very insecure. He wanted to be Spider-Man.
Right.
Like,
he was the fan club. And they do show that in these movies. And he's part of the fan club. Yeah.
I like that.
And, the original movies didn't show development of Flash at all, where these have really kind of shown a development of Flash, which is kind of an interesting way to go. Yeah. I kind of wish they would have at least pushed it a little further, first one, on his bullying of Peter. But, he's kind of the rich bully now.
Yeah.
He's the rich kid who gets whatever he wants sort of bully, which may be worse than the physical bully. I don't know.
It is. I mean, emotionally, I think he's a terrible bully. But I think they've, again, given him depth where he is an antagonist.
Right.
But he is also so much in the, admiring Spider-Man, that he would never, if he knew Peter was Spider-Man, he would never do this. He wants to be a hero. He wants to be a hero. He wants to be seen. He's a rich kid who has all these viewers and all this stuff. And I like how they work technology into this Spider-Man. And he's got all these followers and he's doing all this stuff, but his whole goal is to be seen and to be somebody important because of his family. And they do touch base on his family a little. I mean, I think that they flesh out the potential antagonists and villains a lot more, and I think that I think he is one of those that he's, you know, you kind of want him to turn to be a good guy, but he's still there, and you're like, you're like a little bully, and so
Right. Let me just slap you around. No, I agree completely with all that. Yeah.
Well, which is your favorite of the Tom Holland movies for the villains?
Oh, for the villains, probably the first one. I'll just be honest with the Vulture. I mean, I really, really like that one. So, I like them all. The second one was an interesting way to go with the villains, with Mysterio and how you portrayed him.
Yeah.
It was fascinating. I thought that one had a lot of cleverness to it, but I love Michael Keaton as the Vulture. I really did.
Yeah, and number 3, I love number 3 because they brought so many villains back.
That's true. You're right.
But
and played with them to where you tried to save them. Yeah.
And I love that it showed off Spider-Man's wit.
Yes.
So much more when he was talking to people who expected the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man or the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man. Like, his wit was shown off way more. And I love that. My least favorite is number 2. I mean, I get it, and
it's fun. But
it's fun, but I wanted more. I wanted more, like, actual villain, like, you know.
Right.
And I wanted more of a reason for the villain other than money and kind of fame and kind of, you know, notoriety. Like, I love villains who have an actual, like, backstory of why they're doing this.
And a compelling one that makes you go.
Not just, hey, I want to be money.
That's a bad choice, but yeah, I can understand why you would do that. Yeah.
So I feel like he didn't have any redeeming qualities, and I think a really good villain, like, he doesn't, like, Mysterio's a good villain, don't get me wrong, but I don't think they pulled off making him compelling at all, or making you, like, feel any compassion whatsoever. Whereas, like, Michael Keaton as, you know, Vulture, like, you felt some compassion for him.
Right. And he scared you to death.
He did. Really so I mean, but I do like where it's going. I'm like, I will be happy if they make 10 more.
So let me ask you about this, because this is a big thing in the end of this one, and then we'll transition and close it up, because we're almost at 2 hours, and we knew we could talk hours about Spider-Man. Right, exactly, because we love Spider-Man. So what did you think of the very almost Uncle Ben-like death of Aunt May? In the fact that of how it affects him, because we don't really have any indication that this Spider-Man has an Uncle Ben.
They never mention Uncle Ben.
Never mention him at all. So her death is very traumatic to him. In fact, at her grave, there's no. I looked to see if there was an Uncle Ben headstone.
There's
not. So it's a choice. It's interesting, and it could motivate him very similarly to how Uncle Ben's death motivates the others.
And I agree with that, and I think that it. So I do not think he had an Uncle Ben. I do not think this Peter Parker had an Uncle Ben at all. She doesn't mention an Uncle Ben.
She doesn't.
She doesn't mention being a widower.
Not at all. No pictures. No.
There's nothing. And I feel like we don't even really. I mean, we know Spider-Man's origin story.
Right.
But they don't really talk about this Spider-Man's origin story.
No, you're right. They don't.
And so, you know, we know he got bit by a spider, and now he is, you know, but we don't know how that happened exactly. We are just going off, and I kind of like that. I kind of like that they didn't give us another origin story.
Right. We've got 2 sets of movies with origin stories. One of them horribly failed, but yes.
Right. And so why do that again? Why do everyone knows how Spider-Man became Spider-Man? I do. When I saw Aunt May die, I was like, and spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, but it's been out for a while, so we're good.
It certainly has.
But when I saw Aunt May die, and then the whole him having to in him with MJ, and like it ends with it's JJ is saying it's Peter Parker, and that sort of thing, and then him in Doctor Strange trying to get that whole thing reversed, and it fails miserably.
Right.
I feel like those two movies have left him, if they go forward with more movies with him, which I know that they're scheduled to be, but we know that there's a strike going on and all kinds of things, and we know movies are a little up in the air right now.
They certainly are.
But I think that they have set him up to be at the lowest point of a Peter Parker.
Yeah.
Lost Aunt May.
Right.
Ned and MJ don't know who he is now.
Right.
He is living on his own. He has no relatives.
Right.
No one knows who he is.
Right.
Which means he can't reach out to Happy. He can't reach out to Stark Industries.
Right.
As Spider-Man, they know who Spider-Man is. They don't know who Peter is. As Spider-Man, he could, but how awkward is that for him? And I feel like that would, especially when he knows Happy had such strong feelings for Aunt May and he couldn't save her. I feel like that potentially could give him a huge amount of guilt-driven motivation, which is what we talked about Spider-Man is about, is that guilt-driven motivation. And the fact that...
And I know in the latest animated movie, that's kind of the focal point. So if you've not lost somebody, you can't really be Spider-Man.
Right. And, that I think is... I knew when going into number 3, they were going to do one or two things. They were going to kill Aunt May off, or they were going to kill MJ off.
Right.
Because this Spider-Man has not lost anyone that we've seen him lose.
Right.
Like, Tony Stark is one thing. Okay, Tony Stark chose, he was heroic. We see that.
Right.
We see in that, and that was that Uncle Ben-ish type moment too. Like he had a very strong connection with this Tony Stark, but I don't think it was enough.
Right.
And I think that Aunt May or MJ were going to be the ones that were going to push him to be more of the Spider-Man that we know. So I look forward to it because I think that after Uncle Ben dies and after Gwen dies, and he can't save them, it really affects him, and you see this guilt just eating at him. And I think that this next movie could potentially be very emotional and really drive home that storyline of Spider-Man feels alone a lot of the time.
Right. So if you were going to bring in a way to bring Venom over, which it's set in a different world in the movies.
Right.
So, but if you're going to bring it into the MCU, how interesting would this be? Because he is emotionally down, having some sort of alien attached to him with those negative emotions feeding in to cause him to do stuff.
Right.
Now, if you're going to do that, and I pray that if they do that, they do it the right way. The only way to do that is to do that within 2 movies. You have to have him doing all of that and then trying to get rid of the suit, and then the suit coming back to haunt him with Eddie or whoever you're going to make Venom going forward. So that would be... So you would have basically the trial of Peter Parker and then overcoming all the negativity to get rid of the suit, and then having the suit come back to get him in another movie. So
right.
And that's the only way to do it right. You can't do what they did in Spider-Man 3, where you have a fight scene at the very end and you kill Venom with a pumpkin bomb. I don't know.
It's Venom. It's Venom. I do think that it lends his where he is emotionally right now lends itself to having a Venom, like a symbiotic attached to him at this point, because we all know that the symbiotics look for people who are in distress to attach an emotional upheaval or even psychologically damaged.
Right.
That's who they attach to, depending on if you're talking Carnage or Venom, depending on what the symbiotic is. I think that it could be potentially fun. I would love to see Tom Holland use his acting, because I've seen him in other movies and I know the kind of actor he is.
Yeah.
I think that it would highlight his acting skills. And I think that right now in his life, he doesn't have anyone, which makes it the safest time for a symbiotic to attach without us putting characters that we love in danger.
Right.
As a showrunner, that would like, if I was like making decisions, I would be like, okay, so we can still have MJ there, we can still have Ned there, but because they don't have a personal relationship with Peter Parker, they're not a Venom symbiotic would know what he was thinking, but they're not going to be close enough for them to be harmed by it.
Right.
So it could bring that out. It could also be a great point now, because Ned doesn't know who he is. And so, because we do know Ned turns into a villain. This would be a great point for that to happen, because Ned doesn't have a relationship with Spider-Man or Peter Parker.
Right.
And they have made it to where Ned, unfortunately, the way that they have him be the guy in the chair and be Peter Parker's best friend, they have made it to where it's, without this break, it would be very difficult for him to turn into a villain.
It certainly would, yes.
So I think that it could potentially be a good place for that to happen. And I think that we also know that Peter Parker, going in comics, his best friends do tend to turn on him.
Yep.
And since we don't have, the Goblin come into this or anything like that, but Ned is there, I think that could be potentially where it goes to.
Right. I agree with that. Yep. That's very true. Now, one last question before we wrap up.
Sure.
Best theme song of all of them.
Oh. Dang.
I've got my answer, so.
Okay, so it might not be the best, but I think it's my favorite. Does that work?
That works.
Okay, I'm going to say Spider-Man 90s cartoon.
It's a really good theme song.
I like it.
It's a really good theme song, yeah.
It's
not as good as X-Men theme song.
No, it's not. But it's very...
Right. No, I agree. And it's not as good as the Batman animated series theme song.
No. That was awesome.
But it's favorite? Really good. I agree with you. But my favorite, the one I think is the best, is the 60s cartoon. Spider-Man. It was whatever a spider can.
So it was, those two were like, that's why I was looking over there. I'm like, oh God.
I know, I agree. Why put you on the spot with it?
And I think it's because I've watched the 90s version more.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because my kids growing up and stuff, and I wasn't born in the 60s, so those were all reruns and stuff like that.
No, I agree.
So I think that, yeah. But I will say, I think the most memorable one is the one you chose. I think when people think of a Spider-Man theme song, I think that's the one they think of.
Well, even to where Tobey Maguire's first movie, after Spider-Man hits, the guy in the subway thing that's singing and people putting money in his hat, and they go, Spider-Man, Spider-Man. And I'm like, oh, that's so awesome. It's such a great...
little Easter egg. You know what we should do? I mean, you know, we love Spider-Man so much. We should watch the movies together and then do an Easter egg video.
I think that would be awesome. I agree.
I mean, anytime I can get like a reason to watch Spider-Man, I'm going to do it. So
I'm with you 100%. Yeah. No, that's awesome. So, all right. Well, that's where we want to wrap up. So, do you want to do our closing little remarks that we normally do?
Okay, and I'll pull up the banners too. So, all right. So first off, we're going to say there's a reminder, guys. Movie's coming out. Called Happy Halloween. You can check it out on Facebook. It is a local Missouri production. Brittany Greer has been on our show before. She is amazing.
Friend of the show.
This is her baby, and she's been doing it. It has been a project of hers for several years, and it is going to be coming out this October. So be on the lookout for that, and go check out her page. Go give it a like, and you'll see all these stills from it, but it looks really good. I'm super excited that has been done.
The first time I met Brittany, she's been talking about this movie.
This movie has
that she had written the screenplay for, and had been rewriting it. So this is a project of love for her. So
yes. And it's a horror movie. Just so you know, it's Happy Halloween. It is a horror movie. Brittany loves her horror movies. And so just so you know, but go check that out and see when it's coming out. If you're in the Southwest Missouri area, it is going to be in the movie theaters up in Springfield. So you can go see it. I'm hoping that it's like some of the other independent movies that have been coming out this year that they've been playing at the Alamo. It is. I hope that it's booked up so much that they add shows to it.
She would be amazing.
And it looks so fun. I'm going to be there. I don't know if I'll be there opening night, but I will be there before it leaves. So
I'm going to have to get Brittany to sign my forehead once the.
Yes. We have the OzPod Gals on Facebook. These are two women who are amazing, nerdy, geeky loveliness, and they are part of the OzCon crew. OzCon is a convention in West Plains, a comic and gaming convention in West Plains. And if you want to, go check them out. They have some videos that have been fun that they've posted in the past, and you can do that. But go give them a like and tell them we sent you, okay? Let's see here. We have our distinguished competition, our DC to our Marvel-loving hearts, and that is the Nerd Informants on YouTube and Facebook. Josh Grisham and Tim Church. They bring you all kinds of nerdy news. They keep you informed of things that are going on with pop culture and celebrities. They have some celebrity interviews, and they do some movie reviews as well. So go check them out.
And I want to say congratulations to them because I know they just had a big mark.
Yeah, I can't remember what it was.
4 million views or something like that. Something absolutely mind-numbing crazy. Congratulations, gentlemen. You guys rock. Here at GeekyKOOL, we send you all of our love and congratulations.
Yes. Let's see if I can find it.
And as you look it up, we'll move on to the next part with the Nerd Informants Beyond, which is a Facebook page that they've got to where other people can go ahead and post memes, stories, comments. They can post things for sale, as long as you're staying cool with each other, not posting anything nasty on there. I believe it is a PG sort of thing, and that's a really cool site.
Okay, so single day reach record 4 million crossed, 14,000 followers, 11,000 likes, and 30 million plus monthly reach on average. So
that's amazing, gentlemen. Congratulations. Those are mind-numbing numbers. I don't even know how to process that. So I'm very happy for you guys. So I just want to say that we Iggy Cool, we send you our love and keep up the good work.
Yep. Speaking of mind-numbing like followers and everything, we have Keith and Gary over at Pop Culture on YouTube. They have a syndicated show now, syndicated shows now, and they have all kinds of shows. I can't keep up with all of them, but what's great about them is they are insightful. They are very knowledgeable about everything that's going on in Hollywood and in movies, and they know so many things and history of movies and stuff. If you guys haven't checked them out, go check them out. Just a warning, Gary does not keep it PG in language. However, put those headphones on, listen to it even if you have little ones running around, because it is totally worth it, and you're going to learn so much from these two men.
Exactly right. Exactly right. They are both amazing. We love you, Keith and Gary. So keep up the good work, and you're doing an awesome job over there.
If you guys have watched our show, you know Keith comes on here all the time, and he's very knowledgeable. My favorite part about the show when they're on there together is when Gary gets Keith to blush. It's amazing. I'm just saying. He laughs and he blushes. It's so cute. We have our partner, Scallywag Productions, on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and more. The collectibles that you see behind me, he puts on his Instagram feed, a collectible of the day, and then he does like last year's collectible and the year before's collectible, so you could have like 3 collectibles of the day. But he does videos. He is also partnering with us at GeekyKOOL and the Geeky Girlness and State of the Ozarks to do the Villain Walk and Hero Walk at State of the Ozarks Fest, September 16th in Hollister, Missouri. We're hoping to have a bunch of cosplayers come out. And we're going to have heroes start at one end and villains start at the other and meet in the middle to give some glares and some, talk down, smack down. No actual physical fights, but that's okay. But we're hoping that it's going to be a great event for families. So bring your kiddos out dressed as their favorite superhero. We will have prizes for all the kid cosplayers, and we're also going to have a giveaway. Friendly Fire Dakota Friend of Friendly Fire Photography, who's an artist, is going to be creating a print, a hero and villain print, that is going to be given away. We're going to give voucher or little tickets to every adult cosplayer who comes out and meets us at our table. They'll get a ticket to put in the thing, and then we'll draw, and somebody will win a framed one-of-a-kind art piece. So there you go. That is amazing. I'm looking forward to it. That's coming up soon. Yeah, I know. I've got to get some stuff ready. And then there's us. There's us. Check us out at GeekyKOOL.com. My husband says we're the one-stop shop for all things nerd. He says it way better than I do, but that's okay. He has that radio voice. He does have that voice. He's got it down well. It's amazing. That's what happens when he's been a DJ for so long and a karaoke DJ for so long. But what's great about our site is we're kid-friendly. We keep everything PG or PG-13. We give you the news. We give you trailers. We have contributors from all over the country who share their nerdiness with you and their geeky hearts, anything that they love and everything. And if you want to be a contributor, just message us on GeekyKOOL on Facebook, YouTube, wherever, or message Larry or I if you know us personally. Message us and we will make that happen. We would love to let you have a platform to have your voice be heard in the geeky world. That's right. In fact, John and Ashley, I believe, are at Dragon Con this weekend. Yay! One of the biggest conventions out there. They're out there representing us with GeekyKOOL, 2 of our beloved writers out there. So that is one of the benefits of becoming a contributor on GeekyKOOL.com, is you might be able to go to conventions and interview all sorts of really cool stars, because they've got a list of interviews a mile long. So I'm looking forward to all of that and hearing from how Dragon Con went, because I've always wanted to go to Dragon Con, so I'm going to live vicariously through them for at least this year, right? So exciting. And if you're in a different part of the country where there's a con that you want to go to, come on board with us as a contributor, and we will try to get you the availability to go to these cons with a media pass. That will save you some money, but you'll also get to experience it. And then we ask that you write about it and post pictures and do all kinds of things. And it's just a way for you to share your geeky and nerdy experiences with the world.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. We're always looking for new contributors because that's one of the core principles of our site.
Yes.
Is that we want to have as many geeky voices and nerdy voices as we can out there because everybody's voice matters there. So, all right. So we're going to wrap up. We're after 2 hours, but we knew it was going to be long because we both love Spider-Man. So,
I'm very
exactly
with my Spider-Man. Artemis says hi.
Hi, Artemis. You like Spider-Man too? Of course you do.
She does, of course. Of course she does.
Everybody loves Spider-Man. Are you crazy?
She wants me to take her out. That's what she's like,
by the way, so an interesting fact, because I didn't even think about, looking behind me,
yeah,
we've got Michael Keaton as Batman right there, over my shoulder, and I've got Spider-Man right here on the door and Spider-Man on that side.
Yep. That's awesome.
I'm kind of representing Michael Keaton and Spider-Man today. So there you go. Just wanted to point it out. Well, thank you guys for joining us. We are so glad for those of you that stuck through with us for this time period and got to watch the show. We hope that you enjoyed our special Saturday night version of this. And we're going to head on out. So stay geeky, and we'll talk to you guys later. And be good to each other.
Yeah, be kind to each other. Bye, guys.
A little kindness always goes a long way.
Right?
All right, we'll see you guys later.